What's up, church? How's everybody doing? Welcome, welcome, welcome. I'm so glad that you guys are here. What a weekend, right? I mean, there's a whole lot going on today, and I'm so glad that you're here. We've got Welcome to CityHope. We got small groups kicking off. Who all's getting into a small group? Come on. I feel like I need to start this whole thing over. Okay, who's gonna get into a small group? Come on, people. Y'all make me feel like I need to just scrap this and just talk about community. Let's talk about how bad the church needs each other. Do you realize how bad we need each other? Okay, we got to get into small groups. That is such a big deal. So that's happening today. All right, well, listen, today we're going to wrap up this series, He Holds the Future. And what a January we had, right? What a January we had of really looking forward and unpacking the future and doing the best that we can possibly do to look to the future and kind of understand what it's going to look like and kind of what that means for us as believers and what it's going to mean for us. Dallas Willard always said, he's a philosopher, he's a scholar, theologian. He always said that Christians think about the future as naturally as we breathe. He actually said all human beings think about the future as naturally as we breathe. Think about that. I mean, even people that are far from God, that don't have any faith whatsoever, we constantly, naturally, we're just thinking about the future. And so last week we talked about maybe my favorite week. I don't know about you, but my favorite week of just talking about what does the actual end look like for the people of God, right? New heavens and new earth and this bringing heaven to earth and everything's this new creation, just this beautiful picture that we have to look forward to. And it's so important for us to grab hold of that idea because that, or let me say it this way, our belief about the future dictates and shapes and informs the way we live right now. I mean, you could take that into the kind of political realm and to kind of what's going on in culture. You could take that into the international and wars and all the things that are happening. But whenever you, as a child of God, lock your heart and your mind onto what God says is going to happen, like it changes how you're able to live right now. Right? And it kind of shapes and dictates how you live right now. The illustration that I used at the end of last week's message was, whenever someone else kind of spoils a game or a movie, right? You remember this? Like, somebody spoils that for you. And what happens is we don't like that, of course, but what happens is that we watch it differently. I can remember not too long ago, my oldest daughter was finally old enough to watch The Sixth Sense. And you know that ending, that twist ending at the end? And as a dad that's watched it and loves movies and has watched it 100 times, I'm across the living room watching her face to watch how she experiences it for the first time. You know what I'm talking about? Have you ever watched a movie with somebody or something and you know the ending and you're kind of watching like, oh, I can't wait. This is going to be incredible. But if I know how it's going to end, I'm watching it differently. There's a different type of anticipation, expectation. Yeah, there's still some of the butterflies and the nerves and the suspense and the tension, but I know how it's all going to shake out, whereas she doesn't. And there's pins and there's needles and there's anxiety. And I can't help but think with us knowing the future, with us kind of understanding what it looks like, it should change the level of anxiety that we feel on a day-to-day basis. It should change the level of joy that we feel on a day-to-day basis. Right? That 4 people are super stoked about that. And the rest of you guys are like, I don't really care, man. Right? Like, guys, that's incredible. Right? There it is. I always brag on you 9 o'clock. To the 11 o'clock, I'm always like, man, 9 o'clock's got you. So you're doing it. You're okay today. I'm not going to give you a hard time. You're doing great. But back to this idea of understanding the future, what we believe about the future, how it dictates how we live right now and what's going on right now. I think about the book of Revelation, which is where we spent the last couple of weeks. And we only did a couple of weeks there. We could have spent so much time there. And honestly, I kind of want to. I don't know about you, but I kind of want to maybe later on, I kind of want to dig back into it a little bit. But for the purpose of January 2024, it was like God just said, hey, let's park right here at the end. And let's make sure that we understand, because what John is doing, if you remember, I kind of talked about this a few weeks ago, the word revelation means apocalypse, which is scary, sounds scary, but it actually just means the unveiling or the revealing. That's all it means. And so Jesus gives this revelation, this singular revelation. It has multiple visions and pictures, but it's one revelation from Jesus. And John writes this down, but the whole purpose that John wrote it down is to reveal, to unveil what's going to happen. Like, the purpose of that book was not to freak you out and to scare you and to cause anxiety. The purpose was to unlock for you what's going to happen so that you can live with a certainty and a confidence and a peace knowing how everything's going to shake out. I love this in 1 Thessalonians, Paul, and kind of unpacking the end times, unpacking what we've been talking about. I want you to notice what he says. He says, brothers and sisters, we do not want you to be uninformed about those who sleep in death, so that you do not grieve like the rest of mankind who have no hope. For we believe that Jesus died and rose again, and so we believe that God will bring with Jesus those who have fallen asleep in him. We've talked about every bit of this. According to the Lord's word, we tell you that we who are still alive, who are left until the coming of the Lord, will certainly not precede those who have fallen asleep. For the Lord himself will come down from heaven with a loud command, with the voice of the archangel, and with the trumpet call of God, and the dead in Christ will rise first. After that, we who are still alive and are left will be caught up together with them in the clouds to meet the Lord in the air, and so we will be with the Lord forever. Incredible. But now look at how he ends. Like, he gives us this amazing picture. He just summed up everything we've talked about in the last 4 weeks. He summed it up in like 4 verses. Therefore, in other words, I said all of that to get to this. Therefore, encourage one another with these words. Have you ever noticed that before? That the New Testament writers, and this is not just Paul, it's all of the New Testament writers. When they talk about the end is near, it's always in this picture of be encouraged, encourage each other, use these words to encourage each other. Has that ever happened in your history of the church? That we've used these words to encourage each other? No, it's typically what it's all about, fear. You know, we either, in the church, we either don't talk about it at all, which is scary, or we talk about the negative parts, the difficult parts, the speculation, all the stuff that we want to pick apart, and all the mystery and all the, like, it's either we bombard and we kind of lock into the scary stuff, or we lock into this fact that I just don't know. I have no idea, so we just don't talk about it. But what Paul's saying is, you know what the church needs more of? Being reminded of how the story ends. Like, we as the church, we need to encourage ourselves and encourage each other by remembering how this whole thing is going to end. It's just not something we do a whole lot of. I don't know if you've ever thought about this before, but the second coming of Jesus is actually a part of the gospel. But it's the part of the gospel we don't hardly ever talk about. Like, we spend a lot of time talking about the death, the burial, the resurrection, the ascension. Like, we understand that the gospel is all of that, man. It's everything that Jesus did for us. But did you know that the gospel also includes the second coming of Jesus? Again, we focus on the beginning. We focus on the first part, but because we're afraid of, or because we don't know, or because it's all squishy, we omit what's coming. No wonder we as the church kind of lives in uncertainty. No wonder there's this angst. No wonder there's this fear. No wonder there's this thing, because we don't ever remind ourselves of the good ending that God has promised us and how this whole thing is going to end. Because there's a couple of things that happen whenever we do that. Whenever we encourage each other with these words, whenever we remember this, whenever we keep the entirety of the gospel in front of us, that Jesus Christ, just as he promised he was going to come the first time, he is going to return the second time. If we keep that in front of us, it does a couple of things. The first thing it does is that it lifts my perspective. It lifts my perspective, because you can see on the mountaintop what you cannot see from the valley. Right? The view that you and I have from the valley is trees. It's the mountain. It's the difficulty, it's life, it's like what's happening right now. But even in the book of Revelation, when John kind of takes us to this mountaintop, it's like we're all of a sudden we're standing shoulder to shoulder with Jesus himself. We're standing shoulder to shoulder with John, and we're looking out, and all of a sudden we see our valley in light of all of creation. Like there's a new perspective whenever we remember, hey, listen, there is an ending coming to this whole thing. It lifts our perspective. In other words, let me say it this way. All of a sudden we realize that life is not about just paying bills and punching a clock and taking the kids to soccer and medical diagnosis and the bad news on the news every single day. It lifts our perspective and we realize, you know what, there's a whole lot more that God is doing. And I don't know about you, but that changes everything for me. Because it's really, really easy to be just valley people. I wouldn't say valley girls, because I know, right? It's really, really easy to just be valley people where we're constantly, our view, our perspective is blocked by the right now, the circumstances, the ups and downs of what we can see. Instead of kind of following John up to this mountain and going, okay, let me see the end. Let me see the bigger picture. Let me understand that God is still at work. Let me understand that God is not finished. Let me understand that he holds the future. Right? We said it last week that I don't hold the future. Right? It brings peace to know that I'm not controlling that. That all the smart people, all the wealthy people, all the powerful people, they're not controlling that. Who is? God is. And so it lifts our perspective. And I don't know if you've ever heard this before. It's kind of this negative concern that will be said sometimes, that somebody will say, don't become so heavenly minded that you're no earthly good. Have you ever heard that before? I used to kind of think that, and some people even think that that's a Bible verse. It's not a Bible verse, by the way. There's a lot of things people think are Bible verses that are not Bible verses, but there used to be a little bit of that you go, yeah, that kind of makes sense. But when you read Revelation, when you understand this picture, biblically speaking, the more you have heaven in mind, the more you have the end in mind, the more earthly good you actually are. Like the more we keep that in front of us, because then that's the thing driving us. It takes us to the mountaintop. We see the bigger picture and we go, hey, listen, in light of where God is taking us, you know what else it does? It reveals the stakes. Like 3 weeks ago, or 2 weeks ago, we talked about judgment and hell. Like it reveals the stakes for those that are lost. But it takes us to the mountaintop. We see this bigger picture of what God is doing. But biblically, the more we think eternity, the more we think in that way, the better it impacts what we do and how we live on this earth. C.S. Lewis, in probably one of his most famous books, he said this, and it's a long quote, so hang with me, but it's so good. He said, a continual looking forward to the eternal world is not, as some modern people think, a form of escapism or wishful thinking. But one of the things a Christian is meant to do, it does not mean that we are to leave the present world as it is. If you read history, you will find that the Christians who did the most for the present world were just those who thought the most of the next. The apostles themselves who set on foot the conversion of the Roman Empire, the great men who built up the Middle Ages, the English evangelicals who abolished the slave trade, all left their mark on earth precisely because their minds were occupied with heaven. It is since Christians have largely ceased to think of it, to think of the other world, that they have become so ineffective in this world. Aim at heaven and you will get earth thrown in. Aim at earth and you will get neither. In other words, the perspective that we should have is that place. This new reality, this picture that we have. And the picture is this, is that we're not waiting on heaven one day. The idea, the thought, the biblical thought is that what you and I have the ability to do is actually bring heaven now. Like the reality that we talked about last week is, man, it just feels so out there, so far away. Like I can't get my arms around it. It's not practical. It sounds amazing. It gets us really excited, but you go, man, I couldn't even imagine that. right? What this idea does, this understanding, and even Jesus in Matthew 6, when he teaches us how to pray, how does he teach us how to pray? Look in verse 6 or verse 9. This then is how you should pray. Our Father in heaven, hallowed be your name. Your kingdom come, your will be done where? On earth that it is in heaven. In other words, Jesus is saying, listen, this is the reality that because of the way you live with eternity in mind, you actually have the ability to bring little bits of heaven to here, to right now, experiencing heaven now. It's not just one day in the future after you pass away. It's not just one day in the future when heaven comes to earth, but it's actually a reality that we can begin to experience now. The newness, the new creation, the new life, the good that we talked about could be something that begins to break in now. I mean, the entirety of Scripture is all about earth and heaven coming back together. And whenever you were saved, whenever God brought you into his family, he didn't just say, hey, hang tight, just sit tight, don't do anything. One day it's all gonna get really, really good. No, what we see right here is the intention, the idea, the heart where you and I are called to do right now is to begin bringing heaven to earth. Is to begin bringing these little pockets of heaven wherever we go, that we literally are taking this new life with us. I mean, in the parables of Matthew 13, you hear Jesus giving these pictures of the kingdom of heaven, the kingdom of God, and they're all pictures of growth. Slow growth, leaven in the bread, or a mustard seed in a tree that's growing. It's slow, it's growth. It's something that you and I get to be a part of. Wherever we go, we're bringing a little bit of heaven in. We are meant to, in the meantime, not sit and wait, but to actually move heaven forward. So what does that mean? That means that through you and I and the power of the Holy Spirit in us, that means that whenever you mourn with someone who's mourning, you're bringing God's grace and God's goodness and you're bringing heaven into that place. When you pray for someone, as we did a few minutes ago, for healing or help or whatever, and God shows up, what is that? That's heaven showing up. Right? We could go on and on about just whenever you do these things, whenever you share your faith, whenever you are bold enough to pray for someone at work, when someone has a need and you say, hey, let's pray right now. I thought about teachers going into their classroom before school starts and praying over their classroom and praying over those desks. Whenever you adopt or foster a child, like all of these things, what it is bringing heaven to earth. You're bringing the good into this place. You're bringing the right, the holy, the wonderful into this place. Whenever you pay attention to the stranger, the hungry, the thirsty, the naked, the imprisoned, whenever you pay attention to the oppressed, whenever you pay attention to the single mother, the widow, whenever you pay attention to the orphan, what are you doing? You're bringing heaven to earth, right? So we're not called to just sit back and go, hey, one day, someday, it's gonna be really sweet for me. No, God said, hey, listen, I brought you into this thing right now because I need you to help me bring this thing here. Because there's a lot at stake. There's a lot at stake. The people we know, the people we love, there's a lot at stake. One more verse, and it's another little bit of a long one. But Peter says it this way: the end of all things is near, which again, all the New Testament writers say the end is coming soon. The end is near. Okay. We've been in the end times since Jesus went to heaven. Okay. That we've been in the end time. That's what they're saying. Hey, listen, the end is near. But look at what Peter says. Therefore be alert and of sober mind so that you may pray. We talked about this week 1, right? Keep watch, be ready, right? But above all, love each other deeply. So in light of the end coming near, you should be clear of mind, be praying, be sober, be ready, and keep watch. But then above all, love each other deeply, because love covers a multitude of sins. Offer hospitality to one another without grumbling. Each of you should use whatever gift you have received to serve others as faithful stewards of God's grace in various forms. If anyone speaks, they should do so as the one who speaks the very words of God. If anyone serves, they should do so with the strength God provides, so that in all things God may be praised through Jesus Christ. Right? You and I right now, like, it changes our perspective. All of a sudden we realize that we have a job to do. We have a place in this thing. God is calling us to bring heaven here. Andy Crouch, a writer, he says it this way, and I'm gonna grab 2 of these words that I just think help just lock it into my mind. He says, as Christians, we don't need to be people who just critique or withdraw. Boy, isn't that easy? To just point our finger at what's wrong and what's bad and all this stuff, and then just withdraw from it, to kind of disappear, just kind of back away from it. He said, but our job is to mend what is broken and to tend what is good. We are called to be menders and tenders. Right? We are called to go into broken places, to go into broken situations and what? And mend them. To bring the grace of God, to bring the grace of Jesus Christ to those places, to tend, cultivate what is good. Find the things in this world that are good in your life or that are good and tend to it, cultivate it. Bring God into those places. This is what we're called. Why? Because we know what's at stake. Our perspective has been lifted. We know what is at stake. We understand what's happening. You know what that does for me? That changes my priorities. Like it changes what's important in my life. It changes what I invest in, my time, my talent, my treasure. Like it changes the way I see my children. It changes the way I see my community. Like it begins to change everything whenever I realize that I've got a calling on this earth. Like there's a purpose for me here, and it's to bring little pockets of heaven wherever I go. Just last week, we went to the post office, and I saw this firsthand. We walk up to the counter, and it's all of us, the whole family's together. Well, most of us, four of the five. Bella was in school, but we walk up to the counter, and the lady behind the counter, I was the first one to greet her, and she was not too happy to see me. I don't know what I did. Maybe I don't know. I came in strong. I'm not really sure, but she was not a happy camper. And I just kind of looked at Becky and I was like, woo, I think I'm going to do a little awkward moonwalk on back a little bit. I'm going to let you handle it. And so it was about a 15 or 20 minute interaction. And I kind of backed up out of the way because for whatever reason, I just, wasn't getting, I don't know. Anyway. But what I saw for the next 15 minutes was my wife in kind of like dignifying her with just a kindness. In the face of grumpiness and mean and short. And in that moment, over a course of 15 or 20 minutes, the whole mood changed. By the end of that interaction, she was friendly. I wouldn't say she was sweet. But her entire demeanor changed. Like by the end of it, I didn't feel like I need to get in my car and leave right now. Like it was just this beautiful picture of like heaven coming into darkness, heaven coming into a difficult place and changing things. Why? Because the Spirit of God through my wife and love and grace and kindness stepped into a difficult place and changed the environment. And I think that's what we're called to do. That's what we are called to do. And as Jesus said, remember Matthew 24, Jesus says, hey, keep watch, be ready. Those are not passive words, those are active words, right? There's an urgency. There's a lot at stake. There's a lot of darkness. There's a lot of hurt. There's a lot of depression. There's a lot of oppression. There's a lot of stuff, but there's an urgency to Jesus' words. It's not just, hey, sit back and just wait. No. There's a get ready. There's a be watching. There's an urgency to it. And this is so important for us to get. I remember 5-6 years ago, you'll probably remember this. Actually, it was 2018, January of 2018. There was a text message alert that went out to the entire state of Hawaii. Do you remember this? This is what it said. It made news everywhere, but for the entire state, it was their text messages, it was on the TV, it was the radio. Ballistic missile threat inbound to Hawaii, seek immediate shelter. This is not a drill. Okay, 38 minutes later, they found out that it was a false alarm. Okay, but this was the text message that went out. It's kind of fascinating now, 5-6 years later, this short little window. It seems like a little blip, but there's been a lot of research done about these 38 minutes and 11 seconds. Because during those 38 minutes and 11 seconds, they went back and they were able to pull the text messages and the communication that went from the state of Hawaii everywhere. And you know what those messages were? Love, reconciliation, reaching out, and it was all urgent. They didn't know when this was gonna, now for us, the end is good news. This doesn't feel like good news. For us, it's good news. But what I want you to feel is the weight of the reality, the stakes that are at play, that there are people in our world that do not know, right? That there is something coming, and there's an urgency in us to where we've got to, hey, in this moment, what is most important? Nobody was ordering takeout in the 38 minutes. There was no Uber Eats running around. Like nobody was running down to the grocery store to stock up on toilet paper. We got just a few minutes, like there's an urgency, like what's important? Now go buy toilet paper, I'm not saying that. But I'm saying like what's urgent? What's priority? What's important? How are you spending your time, talent, and treasure? Like all those things should come into play because there's an urgency to the life that you and I are called to live. Keep watch, be ready. Keep watch and be ready. And bring little pockets of heaven everywhere we go. So number one, whenever we keep the end in mind, it lifts our perspective. Here's the second thing. The second thing is that it strengthens my resolve. I told you a couple of weeks ago that the book of Revelation was written, and it was written by John. It was the revelation from Jesus to John, and he wrote it down. And it is both a prophecy and a letter. Okay, and it's important if you ever pick up the book of Revelation to remember that it's a prophecy and a letter. In other words, prophecy, it's a foretelling of what's to come, which we know, we've understood that, but it's also a letter, which means that it was written to someone. And John tells us in the very first chapter, it was specifically written to 7 churches. Okay, so it was not written to you in 2024. It was written to 7 churches in Asia Minor. He lists all that out. All 7 churches are listed there. There's a message to each one. But it's 7 churches in Asia Minor. Today, Asia Minor, then it was a Roman province, but today it would be kind of the western edge of Turkey, to kind of put your mind there. But all 7 churches were kind of close together. Like there is a little cluster of where these 7 churches were located. They're not spread out all over the globe. He's not writing to today. He's not writing, even further than that, he's not writing to nameless, faceless people. Like John is writing this specifically to a group of people that he knows. He's visited, he's been there. But not only does he know these people in their church and their little towns and kind of what's going on in the region, but he knows that every single one of these people right now are facing distress. They're facing persecution. They're facing the ultimate difficulty when it comes to living out their faith. At this time, the emperor, most scholars believe the emperor that was over Rome at this moment was Domitian, who came right after Nero. You've heard of Nero, right? We've all heard of the Emperor Nero and how bad he was. Well, Domitian was cut from the same cloth. The things that he did to Christians, the things he did to people, he burned the entire city of Rome to blame it on the Christians. Like these are the kind of people that we're talking about. But Domitian, he brought back he resurrected this old imperial cult of emperor worship, where what he began to instigate and he began to put into the culture was that the emperor should be worshiped. That literally they would call in all the provinces all over this part of the world. They would call in people and they would require them to bow before the governor, but in light of Caesar. So they would look at an image of Caesar on the wall. They would kind of drop a pinch of incense. They would pour out a little bit of wine in front of his image, and then they would say these words. They would say, "Caesar is Lord." Worshiping Caesar. Now imagine. Now obviously you recognize those words, right? Caesar is Lord. We know that the Christians began saying Jesus is Lord as a overturning or a right side up, kind of destroying that old allegiance, destroying that false way. But what would happen is if a Christian were to come before a Roman tribunal and refuse to say those words, they would be killed. So all of these Roman provinces all over the area were facing this kind of persecution. So just go there for a moment. Go to this first century place where you or your wife or husband or your children or your loved ones, your parents could be at any moment brought before a Roman governor, brought before this tribunal and expected to bow a knee to Caesar and say Caesar is Lord. And if they refused, they would say, kill him. The question, goodness, just think about that. And I know that's really hard for us to put our minds there. But the question is like, what would sustain them? Like, what would give them the ability to look at a Roman governor dead in his face and say, I will not deny Jesus Christ? I mean, because honestly, it'd be really, really easy in that moment to just kind of say, you know what, for today, I'll repent tomorrow. For today, I'll say what I need to say. And then I'll go home and I'll worship in the privacy of my own home and I'll do my thing and I'll repent and everything is going to be okay, but at least I'm not dead. It'd be really, really easy to do that. And I know people did that. We know people did that. But many, many, many hundreds and thousands of Christians looked them dead in the eye and said, I will not deny Jesus Christ. He is Lord and he will always be Lord. And because of that stand, they were martyred. They were killed. The word martyr means witness, to witness. So by their very life, they were witnessing to the life of Jesus Christ. They said, take my life if you will. We've got one really clear example of this. There was a Roman governor by the name of Pliny the Younger. And he wrote, this was 10 or 12 years after the book of Revelation. So it was in the same time period. There's a letter written from a Roman governor to the emperor. By this point, it was Emperor Trajan. But it gives us kind of a glimpse of what was happening in this time frame and kind of what's going on. So this governor, whether or not he was new or inexperienced, he didn't really necessarily know how to deal with Christians. He didn't really know what to do with them yet. So he's writing to the emperor to make sure he's handling it right. And context-wise, what's going on is that he found out someone had kind of reported or informed on a group of Christians. So a neighbor had ratted out a group of Christians. They had come before this governor, Pliny the Younger, and this is what he says. He's writing to the emperor, to Emperor Trajan, and look at what he says. He says, in the case of those who were denounced to me as Christians, so in the case of those that were informed on, that the neighbor ratted out, I have observed the following procedure. So this is how I've handled it. I've interrogated these as to whether they were Christians. Those who confessed, I interrogated a second and a third time, threatening them with punishment. Those who persisted, I ordered executed. And then look at this. For I had no doubt that whatever the nature of their creed or whatever they believed, stubbornness and inflexible obstinacy sure deserve to be punished. In other words, what he's saying is that these Christians who failed to get with the cultural program deserve to be punished. These Christians who refuse to bow a knee to culture, to the current of the world, to the current of the Roman Empire, those that refuse, they're going to be punished. And they deserve to be punished. I don't know about you, but that feels a little familiar to me. I mean, not so far as death necessarily, although there are many places in the world right now where Christians are being killed for their faith. But not in America. What happens in America whenever we stand on our faith, when we stand on the truth of God's word, what happens is that we get labeled haters and we get pushed aside. We become enemies. If we don't go with the flow of culture, then what happens? We get pushed aside. We become an enemy, right? So kind of put yourself in that spot for a second and understand what's happening. Okay, culturally, this is what's happening. You're not getting with the flow of what everybody else is doing, so you deserve to be punished. And they're going to kill them for doing this. And I can't help but wonder, like what possessed them? What gave them the strength? What gave them the fire in their belly to look those governors in the eye and say, I will not deny Jesus Christ? At one of the most difficult times for Christians in history, thousands of Christians refused to back down from their faith. You know why? I think it's because of the glimpse of the future that John gave them. Because they could not in any way know what was going to happen next, but they knew what was going to happen. They had no way to know how the story was going to unfold. They had no way to know how many churches are going to thrive and how many are going to die and how many Christians are going to, they had no way of knowing the series of events and when it's all going to shake out. But my goodness, did they know the very end of the story. And they knew that in the end, Jesus Christ is victorious, and that's all they needed to know. That's it. And so they could stare culture in the face. They could stare the persecution. They could stare all of these horrible, evil things in the face and say, you know what? Because I know how this whole thing ends, I'm going to stand firm. Do your worst to me, Rome. Do your worst to me. Your worst to me is killing me. That's all you can do is kill me. But what? To live is Christ and to die is gain. Right? That's what they're saying. But they could have never known. They could have never, ever, ever known that within 200 years, the emperor himself became a Christian. And now 2,000 years later, the Roman Empire is nothing but ruins. But the Church of Jesus Christ is alive and strong and all over the world and thriving. And you go all the way back to this small, little, teeny, tiny churches that were in the face of this evil empire, this evil culture, this evil machine in front of them. And these teeny, tiny little churches just said, absolutely not. We will not back down. We will not deny Jesus Christ. We will not say Caesar is Lord. We will not give in to anything else on the outside. We're going to stand firm on Jesus, the name of Jesus, because he is victorious. And like I said, I think it's because of this glimpse of the future that John gave them. I want to read one of these visions. It's probably the first one that John gave us in Revelation 1. And this is how we'll kind of end. This is how we'll end the series. I think it's a beautiful picture. You know what? Do this. Close your eyes as I read this. This is Revelation 1, 12 through 18. John said, I turned around to see the voice that was speaking to me. And when I turned, I saw 7 golden lampstands. Those 7 golden lampstands, by the way, represent the 7 churches. And among those lampstands was someone like a son of man, dressed in a robe reaching down to his feet and with a golden sash around his chest. The hair on his head was white like wool, as white as snow, and his eyes were like blazing fire. His feet were like bronze glowing in a furnace, and his voice was like the sound of rushing waters. In his right hand he held 7 stars, and coming out of his mouth was a sharp, double-edged sword. His face was like the sun shining in all its brilliance. John said, when I saw him, I fell at his feet as though I was dead. Then he placed his right hand on me. Specifically his right hand, his hand of favor, his hand of blessing. He placed his right hand on me and he said, do not be afraid. I am the first and the last. I am the living one. I was dead, and now look, I am alive forever and ever, and I hold the keys of death and Hades. Look at me. Jesus said, I am the Alpha, the Omega, the beginning and the end, and I hold the keys to death and Hades. Think about that phrase, I hold the keys. Why does it matter what keys are on Jesus' keychain? When you go look at a house, you want to purchase it, they don't give you the keys. They go to that little box, they open it up, they get that little key out, and you get to go in and look at it, but they don't give you the keys. You go test drive a car, and you can ride around with the sales guy, you can do all this stuff, but they don't hand you the keys. They don't give you the keys until you've bought it, until you owned it. Until you wrote your name down on the contract and it's now up to you, it's yours. What Jesus is saying in this moment is you don't have to fear death. Child of God, you don't have to fear hell or Hades or death or the worst possible thing that the world could throw at you. You no longer have to fear it because I own it. because I own it. So when you look at that first century church, you know what you look at? You look at an unstoppable church. An unstoppable, a fearless church that's looking in the face of the enemy going, you can't hurt me. You can't do anything to me because Jesus Christ has the keys to death and hell. You can't do a thing to me. And that changes how I live in this world right now. I don't have to be afraid. I don't have to be worried. I don't have to be scared. I get to stand on the rock of Jesus Christ, the Lord of Lords and the King of Kings, the Alpha, the Omega, the everything, the one who holds the key, the very keys to death and Hades. I get to stand on him. And the third thing it does, you know what the third thing is? The third thing is this: it calls us to worship. Just like John did. And he falls to his face. Isaiah 6, same. He sees this vision of God, and what does he do? He falls on his face. When you get a picture of God and what he wants to do for you and what he wants to do for his people, what he wants to do for humanity, when you get a picture of that, all it does is it brings you to your knees. It puts everything in perspective. It reveals to you who he is and his heart for humanity, his heart for you. And that's the kind of person you go, man, I will follow you anywhere. You are my King, you are my Lord, you are my Savior. And it puts me on my knees, it puts me on my face, and it just says, you know what, I give you my life, I surrender it all to you. You are everything. That's what's happening. Yeah, you own it all. Even me. Even me. God, I surrender my life to you. Will you just close your eyes? Thank you, thank you, thank you, God. God, you are so good. You're so much better than we could ever imagine. I thank you for this reality. I thank you for this picture. And God, I pray that it's not just some picture. It's not just some neat thing that we've learned, but God, this would propel us. This would fuel our life in this world today. God, that it would lift our perspective, that we would see what is important today and how to live out this reality today. God, show us that, but also that it would give us a resolve. It would give us a strength, God. It would lift us, God, above the worry and the fear and the onslaught of culture and all that. God, give it. I just pray that, God, that we would rise above every bit of that, God. Not on our own strength, but on your strength, on your rock, on your truth, God, that you hold the keys of death and Hades. That it would call us to our knees to worship you and your goodness and your grace, that it would put everything in perspective, Lord, that as we go further into this year, as we face the economy issues, as we face this next election, Lord, as we face job losses, Lord, as we face medical diagnosis, God, as we face bad news, as we face pressure and all the things of the world, I pray, God, that you would bring us back to this reality that you hold the future. And in the immediate, in the valley, in the immediate of all of these circumstances, God, that we can remember, God, that you've got every bit of it in your hand. We may not know what tomorrow holds, but God, we know what the future holds. And we know who holds the future. Just keep your eyes closed for just a second. If you would like to put your faith in Jesus Christ and you'd like to surrender your life, will you just raise your hand? I'll keep this really short and sweet. Just raise your hand. Right now, if you want to put your faith in Jesus Christ, I see several hands right now. Will you just pray this prayer? Pray, Jesus, today I want to give you my life. I want to follow you. I ask that you would forgive me of my sin. You would take my past, get rid of every bit of it. Make me new, make me whole. I surrender my life to you today. Thank you for dying on the cross for me. In Jesus' name, amen.
Hey everybody, thank you so much for tuning in and for experiencing this service with us. What we find in Scripture is an encouragement not just to be hearers of the Word, but doers of the Word. And the encouragement that we want to leave you with in light of that is don't let this just be content. You see, on this platform, you'll see a lot of content. There's a lot of things that can fill a lot of your time, but we want this to be more. We want this to be life transformative in the next step that it sets up in your life. On the screen right now, you're going to see a QR code just kind of flash up there. We'd love for you to scan that QR code, and what it's going to be is it's going to help you find that next step to connect with us. And in that, we can help direct you to whatever is that next step in your life to connect you, not just with content, which you found, but also with the body, with other believers, with people who are walking the same journey, whether it be from a place of honest questions and doubt to a place of, hey, I want to grow and mature in my relationship with God. But we want to thank you for tuning in with us. We've loved spending the time with you, and we'll see you later.